What is happening, people, and welcome back to the Scarfy Spurs Talk podcast for another episode. Today, I'm joined by three fabulous guests. Firstly, Ben, doing me a massive favour stepping in last minute. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you, mate. All good to be back on. Pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you very much. Regular on the show, Justin, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you for having us back on. As you say, I'm on next week, so I'm getting quite used to this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you must get confused the amount of links that I send you because I try and
Yeah,
organise it in advance. So I would. So there you go. Thank you very much once again. And first time on the show, the wonderful Julie. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I did a 10k run this morning, so might be a bit knackered.
That's completely understandable, so don't worry about that. So thank you very much again for giving me your time this evening. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It's free to do so, and it helps the channel grow to get to 2k by the end of the season. If you're listening on a podcast platform, Spotify, Amazon Music, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Pause the episode. Also, head over to YouTube, search Scarfy Spurs Talk, and smash that subscribe button. So thank you very much. Let's crack into it. But actually, before we do, Jewish Passover begins today and goes on until the 30th of this month. So I'd like to wish on behalf of the podcast, those who celebrate it, a very happy Passover on behalf of the podcast. Ben, I'm going to come to you first. Newcastle. I hate to bring it up, I know, so I apologise in advance for that. Now the dust has settled. Did you see it come in, and just how bad was that?
It almost feels like where it's been over a week now since that game, I've kind of tried to put it to the back of my mind as much as possible. So to go sort of back there and think about it, we were poor. It was one of the poorest displays of the season for sure. But Newcastle were excellent, and they thoroughly deserved that win. I think they pressed us like no other team has really. They kind of stifled Ange ball, if you like, more than any other team has kind of been able to do. Obviously, we've had poor results throughout the season, and teams have been able to stop us, but not quite like that, where you feel suffocated for large periods of the game. We had spells of possession, but I think their counter press, especially in their own half, whenever we did get the ball, was incredible. And the kind of goals highlighted maybe some of the frailties within the squad or things that we still have to build on. Obviously, Van der Ven was, I think, very unfortunate with those two slips in that first half that led to the first two goals. He was put under immense pressure, whether it was the individual mistake from Porro under pressure to play that kind of hospital pass backwards when you've already just conceded a goal. And then in the first, for the first goal, Sonny, bless him, he's an incredible striker and can be in the system, but not necessarily when he's been asked to do what he is being asked to do in these kind of games. He struggles when it comes to holding the ball up, and I think obviously that highlighted how much we missed Richarlison. Obviously, they turned the ball over from there, and it's one ball over the top, and they're in. And obviously, Van der Ven unfortunately slips, and it's 1-0. But yeah, it was one of those ones. It was a kind of day to forget. There's been a lot of questions kind of thrown at Ange since that game, which I think are fair to an extent. But again, I think people were quick to sort of go out there and say that, there's no plan B, or that he doesn't change things quickly enough, all this kind of stuff. And I think there's legitimate criticism that you can label at Ange, but I think, again, it's perspective, and it's the fact that we're in the first year of this kind of rebuild. And obviously we had a great result against Newcastle ourselves earlier on in the season, and albeit they've had an injury hit squad. And I think a lot of people were maybe underestimating Newcastle going into this game as well, with the amount of injuries that they had. Whether we did that as a team, I'm not 100% sure, but they are one of the most well-coached, well-drilled teams in the league. And Eddie Howe showed that last Saturday and schooled us, really. And yeah, they thoroughly deserved it. But I think once the dust has settled a little bit, you can start to maybe not appreciate, but I think you can start to give Newcastle kind of the credit they deserve, as opposed to in that immediate aftermath, that post-mortem's quite raw. And it's like, well, you get beat 4-0 away from home, and all of a sudden, of course, there's naturally going to be that kind of that inquest, and people are going to be asking questions. I was up there in Newcastle. It was a flat one for sure. It was a hard one to take, but we've got to look forward to tough running games now. But we've got to, just got to put it behind us.
Yeah, absolutely. And welcoming on to the podcast, the fourth guest for tonight, Kallum. How you doing?
I'm all right, mate. Sorry I'm late, guys. It's been
fine.
a long old day. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Kallum, I'm going to throw you in the deep end here, because we're talking briefly first about that Newcastle defeat. Obviously, we all know lost 4-0. It was bad. So did you see it come in, and how bad is it now? Obviously, the dust has settled, if you like. Is it still as bad? Your thoughts in terms of when the game ended to now?
I definitely think it's one of them that was quite hard to take on the day. I was listening to it on the radio, and I don't know what it is about football, but listening to it on the radio is a lot worse than watching it, I think, because you can just hear a commentator giving their thoughts, and it just makes it 10 times worse, I think. And especially with it being a year on from when we did lose 6-1 there in Stellini's penultimate game as well. So I think everyone was kind of expecting, though, a couple of thrashings with Angie's style, and to have that and Fulham within the space of about a month probably didn't help. So I think it's a bit raw for me, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely understandable. And Julie, where do you stand on it, that Newcastle loss? So are people overreacting for you, or is the reaction and the questions for Ange reasonable?
Well, I think they are reasonable in that I think that clubs, particularly well-coached clubs like Newcastle, have actually sussed out how to play us. And I mean, it was unfortunate. My oldest son is a Newcastle supporter, and so I was there with
Ouch.
him. So it was really, really kind of bad and embarrassing. But I mean, we just couldn't deal with Isaac and Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes. Isaac is a very, very good player, sure. But I mean, he just had nothing to offer, I don't think. There was that sort of, I mean, you couldn't help but think back to the last days of Stellini. I don't like to sort of talk doom and gloom at all, but I think that Spurs in its current mode has been found out a bit. And the Fulham game was worrying because, we should have been able to do something with them, and we didn't. And because of Newcastle's sort of injury list, which has been worse than ours, we should have been able to do better against what is actually in Newcastle, a makeshift team. And I mean, it was really, really horrible. I'm just trying to sort of get over it even now. Sort of thinking ahead, what lies ahead. And well, we're going to come on to the loss of Udogie, obviously.
We will.
It's going to. It's not a great time of the season for us ever, it seems. We always seem to have this collapse. There's a kind of pattern, no matter the manager, no matter the personnel. Up till quite recently, I thought we don't really miss Harry, but Son isn't happy with his back to goal. I mean, we miss that player who will come back and sort of look for the ball and make something happen. It just we don't actually have a kind of sort of a bastard at number 6, for instance, who will kind of sort out the attack and defence. I think that's where the problem lies. I don't think Bissouma's capable of it. He's a very, very good player in a lot of ways, but he's not the guy.
Absolutely, and you highlighted it there, Julie, in terms of the number 6. And I think people often forget that, okay, even in in Ange Postecoglou's system, and number 6 is important, the way you play on the ball and setting up chances, etc. But usually the main role, or very key role, I should say, of a number 6 is to offer protection to the defence. So when we, for me, conceding the goals that we are, and the amount and the way that we concede in, not only does that, so let's say pressure, but questions have to be asked of defence and obviously the goalkeeper, but it has to be asked of the number 6 in midfield. Are they protecting the defence? And I think that's the problem, because personnel-wise, that defence should be strong enough. But I don't think that midfield offers enough protection. It could be Stowe, etc. So, thank you for bringing that up. But Justin, I want to bring you in on it, because obviously, we've been, I think, on Spurs Kings TV since etc. And obviously we both weren't happy at the time, understandably. Now, again, I love the phrase, now the dust has settled. How does it feel for you? Does it hurt? Is it missed opportunity? Is it a case of we have to put it behind us and move on very quickly?
I think we have to put it behind us and move on. I mean, I looking back through, I do feel that in a strange way, Newcastle highlighted what Tottenham are missing. Because if you look at the players that they had, You know, if I'm being brutally honest, I would say the number 6 they had in Guimaraes is so much better. You know, and we all thought that Basuma would be that option. He'd be the one to anchor and then push forward, because it's such an important role in what Postecoglou is trying to do. And for some reason, he's just gone completely off the ball. And I get what Postecoglou is trying to do, just almost try and play him back into form. But it just seems as though, for whatever reason, it just isn't working. And, you know, we need to, I get now why the club are looking at replacing that option, because we haven't got, he was meant to be that, but clearly doesn't suit it. So, you know, whether the club are going to look at a big option to replace the number 6, and whether they do then keep Basuma as a backup, because I think he has almost done himself out of the opportunity of keeping that position, because he's now made it more important because of his ineptitude. Ever since that Luton game, he's just been really disappointing. But the sad part is that, you know, when you have Højbjerg doesn't do both. He does a defensive side, which is fine, but that doesn't really work in a Postecoglou system. And I think that's why with Højbjerg, it's more that you get him for half a game or things like that, because if we're sort of leading, he can dictate the game, or if we're losing but we're getting overrun, he can dictate that part, so he can do the basics. But as we know, he can't spray the ball out or do anything else beyond that. And then, as we saw, Newcastle had Anthony Gordon, who, you know, I think, as I said, has been fantastic. Harvey Barnes, who's come back. Isak, you know, who's been sensational for the last couple of years. And I just feel that those are 4 players that ultimately would have sat. You know, it's not a case of, do you know, of those 4, maybe 1 or 2. I personally think all 4 of them, maybe Barnes, maybe Son instead of Barnes. But I just feel that the others, you know, Gordon, Isak and Guimaraes, if they were in our team, that would have been a totally different scoreline. We would have dominated that game for sure.
Thank you very much, Justin. Before we do move on, Ben, I want to come to you, because again, just so much about number 6 there for you. What in Basuma in recent games, and how big is a number 6 problem for you? Is it a big catastrophe that you need to go out there and sign a number 6? Is it some compare position for you, maybe Bentic or Wardlow? Because there's a lot of talk about it. Do you get where Spurs fans come from in terms of it needs to be prioritised?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one really with the number 6 position, because Basuma obviously had an incredible start to the season, an amazing first 10 games. But I think what my biggest frustration with Basuma, and it's kind of a weird thing to think about when you're going into this run of games where you've got Arsenal to come, you've got Chelsea to come, Liverpool to come, and obviously we've just come off the back of Newcastle as well. Basuma tends to step up in these bigger games, which to me is actually a bit of a problem within itself, because you want someone that is able to give you the same level of performance against Arsenal, against Liverpool, as they are against Luton and Nottingham Forest. And I think that's kind of what we've not really seen from Basuma, which is frustrating. And I think if you are going to progress as into that top side that we all want Spurs to become, I think you need to look at someone who's maybe can't do the spectacular in the way that Basuma can at times, but someone who's just that bit more of a steady option. I think you'd look at someone maybe like João Paulinho from Fulham. And this doesn't necessarily mean that we should get rid of Basuma by any stretch of the imagination, but I think if you are, it's about, again, I think it kind of comes back to a lot of different positions and conversations in the squad. It's like, if you're looking to make an upgrade, I think there are options out there which would turn Spurs into that more.
Like João Paulinho, for example, is anyone that stands out?
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of examples that stand out, I think Harry, we might be getting a little distortion from your mic, but I think in terms of options that stand out, like I said, Paulinho, I think there's someone like Amadou Onana at Everton as well. But again, I think Onana maybe suffers from the same kind of level of inconsistency as Basuma at points. Obviously, Onana is a lot younger. He's got a hell of a lot to learn, so much potential there. So Onana might be someone that they do look at. I think JJ made an interesting point in terms of or Julie might have as well, in terms about the kind of goals that kind of goals that we can see. And obviously that kind of places the onus on having that real sort of destroyer in there to sweep up in midfield. It's interesting when you talk kind of about the perception of Spurs and Ange Postecoglou. We've conceded as many goals this season as Aston Villa in the Premier League. but Aston Villa are kind of regarded as this more solid side. Whereas I think because of the type of goals that Spurs concede, namely on transition, that happened at Newcastle 2 or 3 times where the ball gets turned over and all of a sudden we're incredibly open and in trouble and very susceptible to counterattacks, and obviously set pieces as well. They're kind of glaring, maybe kind of highlights a kind of glaring deficiency in the side, but maybe other teams don't kind of concede the same type of goals, but are deemed more solid than Spurs, even though they are kind of conceding the same amount of volume. But if you look at someone like Villa, for example, they've got that Douglas Luiz, they've kind of got that sort of destroyer in there. Like I said, I think the only thing that would, I think, stop Spurs from looking at someone like Paulinho would be maybe the age profile. And obviously Spurs have kind of maybe looked towards more of a younger recruitment strategy over the last few years, and certainly since kind of Paratici and Langer and Ange have come in as well. But this kind of data-led approach doesn't always necessarily have to lend itself just to younger players. Paulinho is one of the best number 6s in the Premier League and in Europe, and I think that is the signing where if you're looking to kick on next season, that's the one that you would probably go and make, in my opinion. It's just frustrating with Basuma because we all know how good he can be, but we just don't. It's just it's kind of it's kind of reflective of Spurs, really. You just don't kind of see that same level of consistency, which is incredibly frustrating. But who knows? We might see a strong run from him between now and the end of the season because we're going to need him in these games.
Absolutely.
There was there was people talking about the fact that he'd suffered from malaria. Has that had any effect on his standard of play since he got back?
Maybe, who knows?
I mean, he's always been quite a up and down player. I mean, I believe he was at Lille before Brighton, and he's he was a little bit. He's always had something in him that can do a moment of magic, but it's always been about consistency with Basuma. And the closest comparison I've got to it is someone who came over here very young in like Ndombele, and he's got that magic that on his day he's the best midfielder in the Premier League. But the problem is with Basuma, it's his day's not very often, and it's like Jay said, since Luton he's been toilet half the time. He has really been bad. There's no consistency, even compared to having malaria. You can get over malaria quite quickly. You would hope that he would do something, and even his national team coach said that he has definitely got a lot of stuff that's desirable, but there are other players. Well, Basuma's meant to be the big man for Mali, leading from the middle and all that. Even his national team coach don't fancy him. So, I mean, I think Basuma's definitely got something about him where he's got to be dropped and all that. And like everyone said, there's no one in the squad that's capable of doing that. And there are only a few players in the Premier League who are capable of doing that. And
Kallum,
if
can
you had...
Bentacle play that number 6 role for you?
Nah, he doesn't have enough defensive attribute about him. Whenever you see him play, he's always wanting to push forward. He doesn't have enough defensive capability to screen that back four. I don't think. The closest person you would probably say maybe a Skip, but even he hasn't developed how you'd want him to be honest. And like everyone said, Højbjerg as well. Defensive enough, but can't do enough in transition. He's like having a bus without any wheels when you put him in front of that back four, to be honest. That's the problem. He can't go forward enough. So I think there is a glaring weakness. And if you do, like everyone said, João Paulinho, someone like that who can do it.
Who will probably look to leave Fulham in the summer, to be realistic. I think he's, no disrespect to Fulham, he obviously a great club, a good history, but Paulinho, for me, that next level up is what he'd be looking at.
Exactly. I mean, if he was to leave, he would be looking towards a top 6 club or somewhere else bigger in Europe, like with Bayern. But I mean, I still like Amadou Onana from Everton. I mean, Everton are a really pants team. You know, Sean Dyche has tried his best, but he's got an amalgamation of about 9 different managers in there and players who just aren't up to the standard. But someone like Onana is young, fits the age profile that Langer, that Andy Scolding, that Ange would want. But it's whether you convince ENIC to cough up the money, which has been touted at 60 to 70 million, even if they get relegated. he's still only 22. So, I mean, when you've got that, but then you've got players like Bergvall, Devine, all of them to come back. So if you do go out and buy another foreign player, then you've got issues of homegrown quota as well. So there's so many different bits apart from just fixing this 6/8 utility player that Ange wants in there. It's a much bigger and wider issue.
It is, and that's why I always think context is important. But we will move on. And Justin, I want to come to you because there is 6 games to go, including the North London derby. Is it a case for you of just making it through the end of the season with not too many batterings, if any, or do you embracing the challenge in terms of come on, let's go to Anfield or let's go to Stamford Bridge and I back my team, or is it you just want to get through to the end of the season now?
I think, to be honest, after last week, when I think pretty much most English clubs, didn't cover themselves in any glory. Obviously Villa were the only ones who actually came through. It got to a point where I looked at the results yesterday and I thought, Tottenham are not going to get full spot. Okay, they've got 2 games in hand, but it's 2 games, even with the games that we've got, that I just don't feel are realistic. I mean, I'm looking at, who we've got to play. And I almost feel that we should now be looking at this season here and look at it and think, right, what are these players do I want to keep? What are these players do I deem actually should be here next year? And part of me almost sits there and thinks, it's going to be difficult. I don't think he'll do it, but maybe more for like the Burnley game or the Sheffield United game, giving Lo Celso a run out, giving Højbjerg a run out, giving some of the others their actual run outs, Dane Scarlett, people like that, because I do feel that we're not going to, we're going to get, I think we'll get European football. I don't think it's the end of the world if we get the Conference League, because I think Ange would actually take it seriously, and I think we'd have a good shout at winning it. So that to me would tick all those boxes from that point. But I just feel we've got to get to a point where we're not keeping players just for the sake of it. I mean, Højbjerg has gone through ridiculous amount of managers. Lo Celso was back from Pochettino. We've got players there that really we shouldn't just be turning around to a brand new manager and go, right, it didn't work with the last lot, but you're new, so you've got to make it work. That has got to stop. And to be fair, we saw a lot of players go in the summer, and obviously there was a fair few that went on loan and with mixed results, but we should see some money come back from that. And if that is the case, that we've got to do that, I don't think they'll do it with Lo Celso. I think they'll have to sell Lo Celso if that doesn't work, because he's in the last year of his contract. But there are other players there that I do feel, maybe we should look at, and okay, I don't think you're going to get away with doing it against Arsenal, but let's say that doesn't go well in the Chelsea game. Is it a problem throwing Dane Scarlett up top? We see other clubs do it where they give their players an opportunity, and it's the one thing that always seems to, I find, bewildering with Tottenham, which is we have so much young talent, and yet we don't really ever give it a try. We screamed for Troy Parrott to get games, then we sent him on 400 loans. Dane Scarlett, we sent him on loans. We brought in Valise. We've sent him on loan. He can't even get into the squad, So to me, I would love for Tottenham to actually, after these 2 weeks, really, be at their best, be at their strongest, and really take it to Arsenal. My gut feeling is that Arsenal have got so much riding on this game, and they will be desperate to win it. And I'd be shocked if we get anything out of the week. So part of me thinks after the North London derby and maybe Chelsea, if you're going to Liverpool, that's going to be a horrible game, especially what happened last time. So why not put Scarlett up top with Lo Celso behind, and really actually say, look, why not, even if Werner has not shown in those last 2 games. So I tell you what, we'll put Santiago on there as well, or maybe turn around to, and I know he's young, but he's just because he's been training with the squad, but Mickey Moore, why not put him on the bench? People like that. We need to, one thing I think Tottenham has been struggling with, as I said, is this gateway from the youth upwards, and we now need to start showing that. And if after Arsenal and Chelsea, top four is out of the equation, then we really should be looking to the future, and we should be looking to these younger players. Say, do you know what? You've got an opportunity to show me that I don't need to go and buy a 50-60 million pound player. You come out there, you put a show on, and actually, if you do well, then I'll give you more games and more games, and actually then I'll look at you, and you could be there next season, rather than what we've done before, which we've turned around and gone, well, Bassuma's not good enough, so we've got to go buy somebody else. Well, if we've got somebody already there that we can bring through, why not trial and error? To me, there's nothing to lose.
I get what you're saying, Justin. Yeah, I really get what you're saying in terms of when the top four battle, because I don't sound negative here, but I think that Villa in the end will run away with it. And a gap is big enough behind us to be able to give that. And we're not sitting here going, let's start 11 kids in North London derby against Chelsea, but having options on the bench to bring on, there's no excuse to do it. Like Sheffield United, who I think are certain to be relegated anyway, 100% by the time we play them. Burnley, you just don't know. They're showing a bit of fight, picked up a few points here now and then recently, but Sheffield United, for me, there's no excuse. So I'm in agreement with you on that. Julie, going to come to you next.
I'm just going to ask what everybody thinks about, should we keep Werner? Because I think he's okay, but, he gets a lot of stick now. I mean, I know he's had his bad moments, but I saw him against Palace, and he sort of saved the day. And I think there's one thing about him, he doesn't seem quite in control of his legs. I don't know what it is about him. He's sort of, but I think there's a good player in there. I don't think we should. I think we should keep him. I don't know what everybody thinks. I mean, you're talking about the young players, but
I'll put your question to the panel. We'll go around one by one. Firstly, Julie, would you keep or sell him? In terms of keep or sell him. Would you sign him or decline him?
What, Werner?
Yeah,
I'd sign him.
You'd sign him? Yeah,
I think he's a valuable player. He's had, he's got a lot to prove, and I think he's quite anxious about proving it, which is showing in his game. But I think there's a player there.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben.
Yeah, I totally agree. With Julie. I think our fan base has got to have someone to scapegoat, I think, and Werner seems to be the flavour of the month at the moment. First it was Johnson, and now it's Werner, and I think people are getting their expectations a little bit too high of a lone player that came in, kind of with little pressure on him. But obviously, I think, like Julie's right, like you can tell he has got that little bit of anxiety about his own game, because he knows that this move for him kind of needs to work out, and he's playing for that. He's kind of very anxious to get that move in the summer, because obviously didn't work out at Chelsea. He's gone back to Leipzig, hasn't been able to show quite the same level of form as he did the first time round. But I think there's a very valuable player in there. Look, we know people. I think our fan base, to an extent, like the thing I struggle with is that if you're not seen as if you want him, you're kind of seen as not having standards, and it's like, well, people in front of goal, we all know that Werner, that's not exactly his bread and butter. Although in Germany, before he went to Chelsea, he showed himself as a very capable finisher. But if you were seen to want him at the club, it's like you don't want better. Nobody's saying that Werner should come in and be that starting left winger next season, but you won't find many better options in terms of squad depth. And I think there's been a real shift in some attitudes of the fan base this season. We've struggled for depth for so long, and now we've got a really valuable piece to helping us build this squad that's going to help us compete over the next few years. And people are turning it down. I don't really understand it, but I get the thing is with Werner, it's a bit like, it's a kind of reflective of the system as a whole. Sometimes when it goes wrong, it's quite ugly. Like Julie said, like in terms of what he can do, like he's not the most composed in front of goal. He's not that goal scorer that we need. And sometimes it can look awkward. And like the couple of chances at Newcastle, which weren't easy, by the way, but it never looks particularly great. That open goal miss at Fulham, which again wasn't an easy chance, but you'd expect him to score. And I think we've got spoiled when it comes to having arguably the two best finishers in the Premier League over the last 10 years in Kane or Son, and then Werner comes through the door, and obviously it's a different story. But in terms of Jay's point as well, I just wanted to sort of talk about that in terms of some of the young talent. Spurs' academy has got some incredibly gifted players coming through the ranks at the moment. Jamie Donnelly, Iago Santiago. I went to watch the 21s on Saturday at Stevenage, 2-2 draw against Man United. And obviously the 21s are flying at the top of the league, look like they're going to win the Premier League too, which is a huge step up from last year. We were relegated, but were saved due to a rule change. And the under 18s and 19s have essentially stepped up into the 21s and have been excellent. Donnelly, Santiago, Tyrese Hall, who is a really exciting option. Obviously, we were talking about that number 6 position earlier on. That's someone who you think can maybe step into those shoes in the future. But I think it's dangerous. Not dangerous, but I think it's we can't just, if the Arsenal game doesn't go our way, there's still plenty to fight for. I don't think that's the time to start handing out these opportunities, because sometimes players might not recover from that. I think a lot of these players need loans. I know our loan history hasn't been great, but you can't. It's hard to. I get it, but it's you can't judge Tottenham off the past in terms of what we want to do and develop these players in the future. These are the players kind of the future. And I know we've got it wrong with certain loans. Maybe Veliz has been unlucky. Sevilla have kind of been in a bit of a turbulent period since he's been there. Dane Scarlett was incredibly unlucky at Ipswich, that he went to a team that then just caught fire without him in the side. And obviously there wasn't really a space for him. He seems to really like Scarlett. Obviously, he's brought him on in a couple of the league games. He definitely seems to have kind of developed a little bit from a boy into more of a man this year. But I think a lot of these players need to play men's football, and they kind of need to go and get roughed up a bit. They need to go and get kicked. Need to go and learn that way. Especially someone like Santiago, who was electric on Saturday, an absolute joy to watch, and has been brilliant all season. And I think because Spurs fans are kind of crying out for this young, tricky, exciting 1v1 winger, they're looking at what we have in the under-21s and saying, well, why can't he do it? But it's totally different, especially as someone in like an attacking position like that. It's such a huge step up to men's football. So I think we just need to be patient with that young group and let them flourish, let them continue to develop, and build the squad in a proper way next year to kind of go and compete again. But yeah, I would. Long story short, yes, I would sign Timo Werner. Yeah, I think I would.
I love it. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much, Kallum. Where are you standing, Timo Werner?
You know my opinion, mate. You know you've heard it so many times, but I like Werner. I think he's a good professional, but it just screams Daniel Levy all over this one like a rash. It is literally so. If Daniel Levy gets Timo Werner for 15 million, he'll literally go, right, there's no more money, so you can't have another winger. It's one of them where I think if we do get Europa League, Europa Conference League, it'd be good to have Werner in the squad. It would be good to have him as an option. But if people are under this pretense that he's going to be the next heir apparent to Harry Kane when he's 28, 29 next year and going to be struggling to produce consistently all the time through, I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole, mate, to be honest. I would rather beat him with a barge pole back to Leipzig. Let's put it that way. I think as just where he is, I wouldn't touch him. I think there are better options out there who have a higher ceiling, and I think the options that are there, like a Williams from Bilbao and Jonathan Rowe, I think they have a much higher longevity to it, because Werner, you're going to be paying 15 million and 150 to 200 grand a week for his wages, because we know Leipzig don't do small packages, let's put it that way. So I think it'd be a big investment in someone who's only going to decline. He's not his peak anymore. He is never going to improve to be the player that everyone would like him to be, like he was back in Germany 3-4 years ago. And if I could, can I just jump onto a little bit what Ben was saying as well, just a little bit about the youth?
Yeah,
just
go for it. Yeah.
Obviously, I like to follow the youth games. I follow a lot of them. The step from the under-21s is so huge. There's a lot of players that are very good in there, but they are the equivalent to League 2, League 1. And when you think all the players that we had when they first came through, like when Potts was there, they all had lower league loans. They played for QPR, they played for Ebbsfleet, Millwall, Leyton Orient. The under-21s, I think there's only one or two players that have actually played in any other clubs, and that would be Will Lancashire at Sheffield United and playing at Arsenal, and Sonset Bell at Chelsea. They was only youth players, though. They haven't had this step up, and to expect players like Donnelly, Santiago, Dorrington, all of them to go straight into the first team, people need to get their head out of the clouds and actually understand that to expect that of them. Yeah, they're ripping up the under-21s league, but that's such a pipe dream away. And Spurs' academy is not just about developing players to go into the first team. It's about developing players that can be sold for profit as well. And that's what we've been so bad as a club since doing it as well. So if players are to come through, they need to go and have a good 1 or 2 seasons in League One, League Two before you expect them to jump up. And from all apparent sources as well, they're saying Santiago could actually leave the club this summer, from what I'm hearing, because people are he's like Romain Mundell from last year and a couple of others. They don't feel that the pathway is clear enough. Well, yeah, the pathway may not be clear enough, but if you're not ready, then that's a lot of these young players have their mums and dads as their agents, and they're thinking that they can get a big payday quickly, either on the continent or different things like that. Rio Griffiths, one of the best young strikers that I saw a number of years ago in Poch's time, ripping up everything. Thought the grass was greener, playing out in Lyon. I went to see an exit trial for a North Essex league a couple of weeks ago. He was playing in that. It was nowhere near the quality that he is. He's now playing for Rafe Rovers and people like that. So a quick payday doesn't mean that these young players are going to get there. So I think they need to just settle down and play their football and then understand the system, because it's 1 in 1,000 to get through these under 21s setups with Premier League clubs. So they need to just realise that they've got it good. They need to bide their time and work it, not trying to be jumped up kids who think they're actually ready for the adult game. That's the problem.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kallum. I understand and actually agree with both sides of this in terms of, like, you know, as Kallum says, in terms of the gap between first team and the youth academy is substantial, and a lot of players want to go, boom, I want to play now, and then get, you know, don't like it but they can't, or aren't getting that big contract coming in for the big clubs, the big agents, etc. But also, for me, we just don't give those players opportunities. We've given them the loans. I think we've done that right. And like Scarlett, very unlucky in Ipswich, and as already been mentioned, I think by yourself, Ben, in terms of came in, Ipswich absolutely flying, scoring so many goals, the most in the Championship. He leaves, and then they suffer injuries in that position. So it really was, you know, as bad as it could be for Scarlett in terms of he was properly, you know, unlucky. But then they're coming back, and we're not getting too many opportunities. This is Scarlett, get a few minutes, you're here now and then. But ultimately, what are you gonna do in a team when you have 5 minutes, when, you know, the game's often settled and done, and you know you wonder. But also, I think why they should be done all at once is if you're a youngster, you know, you want a full team with yourself in it, in terms of you're getting the service, you're flourishing in the team. So both are really important. I think also not rushing players in, because last season, in terms of you know, Sarr started that catastrophic game, which turned out to be Stellini's penultimate, you know, in the last game, but then was dragged off, you know, before we got to halftime. That could have ruined his confidence as a young player, but luckily he didn't, because Sarr's elite mentality. But you've got to be careful with that, in terms of don't play well, need to come off, or aren't doing well, and the confidence not. But getting back on track, because I want to briefly, soon move on to Arsenal. So Justin, I want to ask your last thoughts on Timo Werner. Obviously, we've discussed it, haven't we, several times before. Where are you at this moment in time? Are you totally opposed? Are you totally for it, for people who don't know?
I think for me, you know, he shouldn't be the starting option, you know, for next season. I mean, if he's signed or not, he shouldn't be the starting option. I don't necessarily have an issue if he's signed, because if he is signed on the basis that he's going to provide competition, obviously I think the difficulty that could come with that is that there is talk that Son will go back to the left, and that Tottenham will be focusing more on a striker, because obviously they have just not replaced Harry Kane. And as much as Son has done a job for us, you know, then I, as I said, I think he would be more suited to the left. But I don't necessarily have an issue with Werner being signed if it means that we go big elsewhere. If we do get, as I can't remember who was said, I think it was Kallum said about Nico Williams, or, you know, we go for Ollie Watkins or Eze or Elise, somebody like that to come in as well. It frees up funds to go elsewhere. One thing I did just want to touch upon, which goes back to what people were saying about the youth players. Yes, I totally get what they're saying. But we've done this multiple times where we sent players out on loan and they just haven't worked, whether it be us poorly sending them out. You know, if you look at, as I say, Valise, you look at
Troy
Scarlett,
Parrott.
you know,
How many loans has he been on?
Exactly, you know, and to me, I get the view of, are they ready? Are they not? And yes, you do get you. It's not a case of you're going to put the whole under-21s out and they're going to be absolutely amazing. I do feel though that other clubs do it slightly differently to us. So you look at the likes of Man United with Kobe Mainu. You look at Manchester City with Oscar Bob, Rico Lewis. You know, obviously. They had him briefly for Cole Palmer and they sold him on for £42 million. Now, would Cole Palmer have got any games for us, bearing in mind how he'd come through? I'm not necessarily sure he would. And I do feel that, you know, one or two of them when a season gets to the point where there's nothing on it, let's not forget and that's why I'd say certainly not in like the North London Derby, but if you're getting to a point where the season's petering out, you know, and you're just now getting to a point of, do these players have a future? Is it such a bad thing to turn around and say to them, look, we'll bring you on, and, you know, rather than what we've done in the past where Scarlett gets 10 minutes to go and entertain himself, you know, maybe say, you know, or, you know, to me, I personally think, you know, maybe for like the Chelsea or even Liverpool game, turning around and going Scarlett up top, Son on the left and Johnson on the right, and just seeing, right, okay, Scarlett's been about long enough. This isn't somebody who's literally just coming from the under-21s. He has had the opportunities. So maybe turn around and say, right, okay, we need to make a decision. If you're going to be suitable for it, we're thinking we're going to put Son back on the left. So actually, why don't we put Son on the left? Let's try Johnson, right? Let's try you down the middle and actually see for the next few games, could that make a difference? Could that give us a better option? Because too many times, and this is what we have done, we've seemed to have nailed our colours to the mast or certain players. Like Harry Kane's our striker. That's the only striker. Nobody else is going to be any good. We're not going to ever play anybody else, right? And you look at certain players and we almost do the same with them. And it needs to be, we need to start acting like a big club and saying, do you know what? If you're big enough and brave enough and good enough, I will drop you in the deep end. But what I'll also do is, if you're not playing well, like Basuma and other players, you will be dropped. Okay, and I will just drop you completely. You know, we've seen it with City, with Haaland, with De Bruyne. You know, Tottenham would never even dream of dropping those players, and this is where I do feel slowly that mentality has to change. But in terms of Werner, if it means we're gonna, if you said to me to sign, if we sign Werner, we're gonna go and get Eze, yeah, then it has to happen. But that is where the worry is would it be, as Kallum said, a Daniel Levy signing where you can go,
it should be an additional thing, an additional squad option in terms of going out there.
If we're going to be serious about winning competitions and things like that, you build a squad. You don't turn around and sign, you don't sign Werner as first choice, but I don't have a problem signing him if he's there to provide competition.
Absolutely valid option off the bench. Thank you very much. We will move on from Timo Werner because before we get to Arsenal, we've got a lot to discuss around that. We had some news in the week that Destiny Udogie is out for the season and he's undergoing surgery to his left quadricep. He sustained an injury in training earlier this week. So Ben, I'm going to come to you first. How bad is this in terms of Udogie and how good he's been this season? But also, are you concerned by the amount of serious injuries in training? I mean, there's been quite a few now.
I don't know. It's hard to sort of give my opinion on that because we just don't know what has kind of gone on. And I know sometimes that people get into that sort of stuff and say, well, wow, it seems to be, we've got so many players getting injured, but it's so of so many other clubs as well, which kind of comes back to the youth debate.
Absolutely. Look at Newcastle.
Yeah,
that's a prime example. So many.
Yeah, Liverpool as well. And the kind of point about the under-21s, that's why they were able to give so many of those players opportunities. So it's kind of circumstantial. But with Udogie, I think it's important to kind of, on a positive note, it kind of gives us a good opportunity to recognise how good he's been and kind of give him his flowers for that. But it's terrible news for Spurs because for someone to come in like that and take to the Premier League like a duck to water, like he has, playing in that position where he is exposed constantly on the ball, and how well he's done under that amount of pressure, playing in an inverted fullback role has been amazing, considering he's never played that before. He was kind of bought as a wing back, much like Porro was, and they've both been excellent this season. And as much as it's a bit of a funny one, really, because I think with Udogie, it's hard to compare them, but I think Udogie's got a higher ceiling than Porro in terms of his footballing ability and what he can go on to achieve. But I actually think a Pedro Porro injury at this stage of the season would be more of a disaster for Spurs in terms of the cover that we would be able to bring in. I think Ben Davies has shown multiple times that he can be relied on. Again, this is the captain of his country. Ben Davies has done a job for us. He'll be absolutely fine in these games. Will he get exposed at points? Maybe, because we're playing quality opposition for the rest of the season. But that's not to say Destiny Udogie wouldn't have been as well. So it's one of those. It's gutting for him. Gutted for him about the Euros as well. Not that he was necessarily going to play, because Di Marco for Inter Milan, who's going to play for Italy, is arguably the best wing back in the world, and that's kind of how Italy's set up. But to have that experience, that tournament experience at such a young age, would be fantastic for him. But gutted for him. I think in terms of how we set up, I think there's been a lot of chat about Van de Ven at left back. I think people are saying that because he played left back at Wolfsburg occasionally. I think he's got the pace, obviously, to do it. But I think, like I sort of touched on with how Udogie's been able to adapt into that role, Van de Ven playing in that inverted fullback position, kind of pushing high up the pitch, would worry me a little bit, because as good as he is on the ball in terms of striding out almost Vertonghen-esque with that pace and with that stride, that ball carrying, he's excellent and he's a great passer of the ball. But I wouldn't necessarily want Van de Ven receiving the ball on the half turn in the centre circle and then wanting to play out wide and then make that run forward like Udogie does, because I think almost with his height and with his frame, I think he could get exposed a little bit on the ball in those real tight spaces when you've got, the likes of Declan Rice and Jorginho against Arsenal. Then you're going up against Man City, you're going up against Chelsea's midfield, which is, if not for quality, it's incredibly tenacious, for someone like Gallagher just nipping at your heels all the time. And I think he could get a little bit exposed there. So I think, again, it's not the most sexy thing in the world, but I think it should be the safe option and go for Ben Davies. He's not let us down. And obviously hope Udogie comes back even stronger for next year, because he's an incredible talent.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much, Ben. Julie, Udogie, how frustrated, if you like, are you for him? And just talk to me about how impressive he's been for you this season.
I think he was an absolute revelation. I mean, you don't often see a player like that. He's just got all the instincts. He's you forget how young he is, a bit like Sarr. I think that his youth has probably contributed to his injury as well, because it's because of the number of games that you have to play in the PL. Although, fine, we haven't had Europe, but the stresses of training and everything like that, I think it takes its toll on young bodies. It's the younger players who seem to have been, had the injury problems this season. I wouldn't call it a disaster, because I'm a great fan of Ben Davies. I think he's a smashing player. He's a bit like a modern day version of Tony Galvin. You're probably all too young to remember Tony Galvin, but very intelligent guy, not the showiest or best player, but he worked very hard. It was his intelligence which really kind of helped that team, and it's the same thing with Ben Davies. So from that point of view, I don't think Udogie missing is a complete disaster, but it's he's the player that you want to see play. Again, a bit like Sarr. He's just impressed me so much this season. I just, like everybody else, I just hope, this is not going to be a long-term thing with him. Same with Mickey van der Ven, actually. Again, very young player, and his stride and everything. He's like a 400-meter runner. He's another who is not quite. he hasn't quite kind of got control of his legs yet, but not in quite the same way as Werner. But I just think that we have suffered as well as benefited from having these incredibly promising, really brilliant, very young players. They're the ones who have kind of wobbled a bit. They've had injuries. They haven't had the experience to sort of see them through. I think that as much as anything, the preponderance of younger players that we've now got is one of the reasons why our season suddenly went pear-shaped. That's just my opinion, and I wouldn't say the season's gone pear-shaped, of course, because I don't think we'll not get into Europe, even if it's the conference, we'll have Europe next season. But when I think of the brilliant start we made, and then it all sort of went wrong, I think. I'm not looking forward very much to the last few games of the season, I got to say.
No, I don't think anyone is, to be honest with you, unless you're very, very optimistic. But we will move on to Arsenal. And Kallum, I'm going to start with you. How are you feeling ahead of the North London derby? Is it a must-win game or a must-not-lose for you?
I think it's a must-not-lose.
Agreed.
I hate having Arsenal's people working for me and all that, and I know that if I'm going to lose, I'm going to have them giving me grief for it one way or another next weekend. But no, in the grand scheme of things, if we turn Arsenal over and we stop them winning the league there, then everyone will celebrate for a day and then completely forget about it. It's one of them where our season has been that up and down and not knowing where we are in a transitional season, that a North London derby is just another game to me, I think, this time around, because we can't expect anything. We don't know what Spurs team's going to turn up. We're either going to have the Villa team, well, the team that we beat Villa with, or we're going to have the team where we got our pants pulled down against Fulham and Newcastle and go headless chickens like Chelsea. It's one of them where I hope we win, but I don't think we will. And to get even a draw from it, if we can just keep a little bit of like closeness to Villa, and even if we just use it to secure fifth now, it's better than nothing in a season where theoretically Paul Merson said we would get relegated. So if we can do something to make him eat his heart out, then hopefully.
Yeah, that is very true. Justin, are you in agreement with Kallum in terms of it's a must-not-lose game? Would you look at it and go, we have to win it, consider our situation, the games we've got coming up, the gap to Villa, 6 points, where you at?
I think, to be honest, for me, it's got to be it's sort of the pinnacle now, because I think we're at a stage of a crossroads where if we win the game, it builds momentum. We go into the Chelsea game, we go into the Liverpool game. If we lose, then I think it defines our season to be over, because, I think when you look at it, we'll probably get, as I said, worst case Conference League, but at best we could get top four. I think with Villa's results now, it has made it a season defining game. And I think the thing that I find a little bit disappointing is how the club haven't really tried to build it up, whether it might be they'll do it close to the time. But I remember the game under Conte, when they were like trying to make it like, when it was a race for top four between us and Arsenal, and they really wanted to make it a proper cauldron and get the fans on board and really make it an uncomfortable sort of thing. And I don't know if we're actually going to see that, and that is what we do need to see if we're going to have a chance of winning this game. We need to see the tip-top Tottenham that we saw at the beginning of the season. We need the stadium on board. We need the fans on board. We need everybody making that place hell for them to play. And then if we can win that game, because I don't think it'll be a draw, I think it'll be a win or a loss. It's simple as that. I think if we can win that game, then we can build momentum to get top four. I think we lose the game, I wouldn't be surprised we finish sixth or even seventh.
Okay, no, that's fair enough in terms of confidence as well. You lose the North London derby, your head's naturally in big games like that will drop, or along those lines anyway. So I think that's completely understandable. Ben, Arsenal, Sunday, how are you feeling? Is it a must-win? Do we have any chance?
Yeah, well, of course we got a chance. We've always got a chance. The way we play always gives ourselves a chance. There is also a chance that we might get turned over. It's kind of the story of Tottenham this season. But look, it's one of those ones where, regardless of the kind of context of it, you're never looking forward to this game. We could be 6 points clear of Arsenal in the race for the top 4 or the title in some alternate universe, and you're never looking forward to it because it's just the anxiety around it is horrible, especially. And I think this is part of the reason why we haven't maybe been able to appreciate the good work that Spurs have done this season as much, is because Arsenal are top of the league. That's partly why. That does have an effect, doesn't it? We're all fans of, as much as you want to sit here and say that you're not thinking about what they're doing, you're not thinking about the fact they're top. Of course you are. Everyone is. Like, the part of the reason it's such a good rivalry is because most Spurs fans hate Arsenal as much as they love Tottenham, and that's why it makes this game so big on Sunday. And look, we're kind of 6 days away from the game. Hopefully the club do start to kind of get people into the swing of things in terms of building up the atmosphere and all that, and kind of building up the hype around the game. It is always hard to do that off the back of a 4-0 loss and when you've got a 2-week gap between it. But look, I think the fans, including myself, that people are going to the game on Sunday, have just got to make it as tough an atmosphere for them as possible, because we know the last time they came to Tottenham when it meant something, look what happened. And again, that was kind of down to the atmosphere. It was a night game. It was all that kind of special feeling. And, a North London derby at 2 p.m. on a Sunday doesn't exactly have quite the same feel to it. And that kind of feeling is important in these games. And that is kind of what caused Arsenal to crumble when they came here. Again, a completely different Arsenal side, a much, much better Arsenal side, who have shown throughout points this season that they are kind of able to deal with that level of pressure. But we've just got to go into the game with confidence and know that our season is still very much alive. And if we can get a win against Arsenal that Aston Villa might not be expecting, the pressure then becomes back on them, because we've got a game in hand as well, albeit against Chelsea, a team that we always struggle against, especially away from home. But who knows? I think we shouldn't, as much as the fans should feel the kind of anxiety around it, we shouldn't be scared of this game. Like, I'm not saying we're going to go and beat them, but I think you've got to be up for it. Like, if you're not up for it, you've already kind of lost the battle. And I think there will be players that will rise to the occasion. I really want to see a big performance from James Maddison, because I'm getting quite irritated with what I'm seeing at the moment. And hopefully this is the game where he kind of all proves us wrong. Hopefully we'll maybe have Richarlison back as well, which I think we need in that player up front to be able to make it stick and hold the ball up and bring the other players into play. I really want to see Dejan Kulusevski back in the team against Arsenal as well. I think
hold up the ball.
I think we're missing that ball retention in kind of the final third, which is so big against these teams, to kind of sustain that pressure. But yeah, I'm excited. It's a North London derby. You've got to be up for it. It means something. It kind of does define our season in a way. And, most importantly, we can stop them from winning the league, which I think will be a bit of a relief to everyone. So let's just see how we go. I'll take a point now, I think, to help us kind of secure that 5th place, because as much as, we probably will secure European football one way or another, I don't want to be dropping down to 6th or 7th. Look, this season is kind of a success in terms of what we went through last season, whatever sort of happens, really. But you don't want to end it like that and end up falling down the table all the way to 7th. We're 10 points clear of Newcastle. But those 10 points can evaporate just like that when they've got the run that they have.
Yeah,
and they've kind of got the momentum. So, we need to go into this game with our best foot forward and just try and impose ourselves on them, just like we did at the Emirates. And I think we've got to take confidence from that, because they are a very tough team to beat at home. So we should take confidence from what we did earlier on.
Absolutely, it's a huge game. It can't be underestimated for both. But I think even a draw wouldn't be great at all for Arsenal, considering, we don't know the result before that with Chelsea. I looked at City's fixtures and went, I can't really see them dropping many points, if any. So for Arsenal, it's a somehow must win. For Spurs, it's an absolute must not lose. Julie, to kick it off with you, and it is a controversial question, and I want you to put your Spurs bias to a side. If I honestly said to you right now, power in your hands, if you like, would you rather take Mikel Arteta or Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham? Forgetting Arteta, his history of Arsenal, etc., and even as a manager, who would you honestly choose?
What? Lego head?
Lego head.
How can you say these things, Harry? I'm
assuming that's Postecoglou then.
I'm speechless. I think that I don't think you can ever have anyone with an Arsenal connection at Spurs, having lived through Terry Neal and George Graham.
But have you forgot that, Julie, and thought about what Arteta's done with Arsenal? Someone try and put that behind you. What do you reckon?
You can't put it behind you.
It's hard,
you
isn't it? Yeah.
You can't. The way he conducts himself, I'd be embarrassed if he was our manager.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why would you want a petulant little man like Arteta down there? He's just shown how much of a child he is.
Yeah.
Excuses to come out though after a loss.
When it goes his way, it's fine. But when it goes anyone else's way, he's just going to sit there crying, and you just feel like going, "Oh, please, just shut up." Go away.
So, Kallum, I assume you also go for Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, I would think I'd rather take Mourinho over Arteta, and that's how bad it is. I mean, I'd rather take Mourinho or Conte because at least they got something done. Arteta's just a. I know you said I can't swear tonight, but I think Arteta's a twat. I think he's just a twat. I didn't swear properly. That's a mild one, so that's
okay.
all right.
It's not bad for you, but is what it is. Apologies if anyone is offended. But you should expect that with Kallum on the show. Just listen to the Heartland podcast and you'll understand why. Justin, do you have to think about the question?
No, it wouldn't work anyway. If you look at it, he spent £600 million to win the FA Cup. He ain't going to get that at Tottenham, so it would never work. He'd moan about it and he'd be sacked within 6 months.
Fair enough. And Ben, I'm assuming by your body language and gestures that you're exactly the same as the guys.
Yeah, not a chance. If I was able to swear, I'd pick a stronger word than what Kallum said about him because he just the way he, the way I won't do it. The way he
Ben, come on Park Lane. You can have Harry.
They love swearing.
Yeah, I will. I will, mate. He's just look. He's a good manager. He is a good manager, but the way I think we've seen how much of a breath of fresh air Andrew's been, and I think actually in terms of this whole current climate and world that we live in, where there's these VAR controversies all the time, and teams accusing referees of corruption and writing statements and all that, I can't be bothered. And Arteta has been at the forefront of a lot of that. And like Kallum said, when he goes his way, he turned a blind eye. But as soon as the most minor inconvenience goes against Arsenal, that maybe a 50-50 penalty decision doesn't go their way, he's coming out crying and they're writing statements. So not for me. Not a chance. I think he's an embarrassment.
Fair enough. Personally. I thought I'd put the question out there, but I did expect it all to be Ange Postecoglou. But in particular, I do apologise to you for the question. But I thought, got to make it interesting. But no, fair enough. Ben, I'll actually stay with you because I want to know, in all seriousness, where do you think we need to watch out for Arsenal, the biggest threat? For me, I think set pieces, Saliba, Gabriel, very, very strong, physical, aerial presence, and our record at defending them as well. But is there any things for you that really stand out, or individuals it can be as well?
I mean, set pieces is a major worry off the bat. I think against Newcastle, they had 13 corners, and I think they won the first header at every single one of those. And it was just like
finally scored from one.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like it was coming, didn't it? It was the most inevitable goal Spurs have conceded this season, but. Yeah, the thing is, it's not even just about how poor Spurs are from defending set pieces. Arsenal have obviously scored a lot, but when you watch Arsenal, whenever they get a corner, there's always something happening in the box. They're so alive to kind of every situation. They try and make it as difficult as possible. It is a nightmare to defend against. So that naturally, Martin Odegaard, I think, I said this the other day, I think Martin Odegaard got very unfairly criticised a lot last season for supposedly not showing up in the big games, when actually I think he's been their most consistent player throughout the season, and he's an exceptional footballer. Just like the ball's kind of on a piece of string with him. He retains possession so well, even if he's not scoring or assisting, which I think people tend to use as the main metric for judging actually how good sort of a number 10 is nowadays, which I get it, but the way he affects the game every single week for them, he's incredible. Declan Rice as well. I think the one thing that might play into Spurs' hands, obviously, I think they almost disproved this on Saturday, but I thought they definitely were starting to look leggy, Arsenal, in that run where they had Bayern Munich twice within a week, and obviously the Villa game. I think it looked like it was getting to them a little bit, and they did look leggy, and I think that midfield was a big part of that. Rice isn't playing at the same level that he was, but that Wolves game, I think they looked a little bit back to their best. But again, they've got to play Chelsea tomorrow night. We all know what happens when Chelsea play Arsenal. They'll always roll over them, so it'll probably be a good 3 points for them. But it's just more minutes in the legs where they can't afford to rest these players because it's crunch time for them, really. They would have played twice before City would have played their next game. Obviously, City, I think, played Brighton on Thursday. So City will have 2 games in hand over Arsenal. So they must put these points on the board. So there's a lot of pressure on them, but yeah, they're a great side. Obviously, very hard to break down defensively. Strong from set pieces. Great technical midfielders. Obviously, Saka, Martinelli will cause us problems as well. So yeah, there's a lot to watch out for. Really, they're a good side.
They are, to be fair. Credit where credit is due. Justin, biggest threat for you, Arsenal? If I said to you, this Arsenal side this season, what stands out to you? Obviously, I expect you to say the likes of set pieces, but anything or anyone else?
I think, to be fair, the bit that worries me probably the most is the middle of the park, because Maddison has not been at his best, and Declan Rice, I think, has been an excellent signing for Arsenal. Has played really, really well. So I think we're gonna, is he going to be at his best? Because he really needs to be, especially going up against him. And if you look at those sort of battles, as it sort of says there, man-to-man battles, when you're looking at,
that's a really good
Maddison,
shout, by the way, from I'm Hyper on YouTube.
If you look at the fact of Maddison versus Declan Rice, Maddison at the beginning of the season, I'd probably have said, as we saw when he turned Saka inside out, that was the Maddison that we haven't seen for a while. And same with Basuma. If this game was at the beginning of the season, like it was in the 2-2 draw, we saw that Maddison and Basuma were able to go toe-to-toe with Odegaard and Declan Rice. I don't see it this time. That's where the worry is. I think I'm not so sure, because Saka hasn't been at his best, although he does like to turn up for these games. You do sort of potentially worry about Trossard. I still can't believe Tottenham faffed around with actually trying to sign him when they could have got him. So I would say they're like the key area. Striker, not so much, because I think that, like us, they will be going in big for that in the summer. But Absolutely. To me, I sort of feel that if I were to pick, if you said to me 2 players I really worry about, it would be Declan Rice and it would be Martin Odegaard, because I think they're going to cut our midfield out and it's going to expose us at the back, I think, far too easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Rice, those late runs into the box. I mean, it seemed a consistent theme against Walter. They cut the ball back and Rice be on the edge of the box. We give players so much time, even it's not with a counter attack, on the edge of the box.
So you've got to pay for a number 6. If you want a serious number 6, put 100 million quid. There's difference. For
me, the closest you can get to Declan Rice right now is João Paulinho, and that is credit to the Fulham midfielder. So for me, you have to splash the cash. If you're not going to do it elsewhere, fine. But that number 6, if we all want a new one, for me, it has to be someone like a Paulinho. But we will move on to people's lineups. Really interested in this. Julie, talk me through your lineup 1 to 11, and also, is it time to ditch inverted fullbacks considering the doggy's out?
I'm hopeless at sort of lineups. I really am.
It's all right.
But I think that it's going to be back 3. So we're going to have Ben. I don't think we can go for the inverted fullbacks.
Okay.
So it's got to be back 3 with Ben Davies. I wanted to jump back to what you were talking about earlier. I think that Son will raise his game for Arsenal. I think Brennan Johnson will surprise us. I mean, I think they'll be frightened of some of our players. It's a great sadness to me that Declan Rice plays for Arsenal, because I hate all Arsenal players on principle, and I think he's a really decent guy as well as a great player. Also, I think if anybody's going to do us, it's going to be Saka. But I think that, as I said, I've just got this feeling that Brennan Johnson is going to do something good. And I think Sonny will also do something good. I'll pass the lineup over to the rest of you. You're better at it than me.
Thank you very much, Julie. Kallum, we'll come to you. Your lineup, obviously, we did touch on it yesterday. Invited fullbacks, keep them, get rid of them. For me, it's an absolute ditch. You just get in the way of the midfield, get in the way of like some Maddison, who clearly isn't flourishing. He's looking for that space. Inverted fullbacks, they invite counter-attacks, they offer space. Ultimately, don't have your best fullback available. Why do it? That's enough for me. That's where I'm this evening. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm kind of following your line now, mate. The more that I've looked at Twitter today, I've seen a lot of people are saying, ditch the inverted, at least on one side. If you're going to do it, maybe invert further up the pitch, have something where you can convert into a back 3 in transition. So I think I'll go Vicario in goal, because I don't think we've got another goalkeeper, have we, apart from Brandon Austin. Apparently he's signing a new contract as well at the club.
I find that really odd, though.
It's just homegrown
odd.
coefficient and all that
Yeah.
rubbish. But so we'll go Vicario in goal, a natural left back, not an inverted left back, of Van de Ven, where he can tuck in. Dragoo
Okay.
and Romero at centre back, with Porro being an advanced right back. Midfield of Sarr, Bentancur, and Kulusevski. And I'll go for Johnson, Son, Richie up top. I'd rather leave Maddison on the bench. It's either that or I'm going to drive him physically to Leicester myself at the moment. And I'm actually tempted to drag Harry Winks back down for one game because Maddison is stinking the place out at the moment. And I listened to something today where they said that we've only paid 13.5 million for him up front and the rest of it's on instalment plans, as Daniel Levy likes to do it. So I'm happy to just go, right, there you go, you can have him back. Can we have our 13 million back? Because all Leicester fans have been slating him and all that, saying this is what he does every season for them. And we all saw the good stuff. Turns out they've seen all the bad stuff.
This bit. Yeah.
No, he can't stay. He misses 13 to 15 games a season through injury and niggles and all that. So I think just drop him. Just drop him. None of these players are invincible. Even Son should be dropped at some point. So I think we need to start being brutal with these players. And the Arsenal game's got to happen because if he plays the same lineup as Newcastle, then Jesus Christ, we're just bending over ready for Arsenal and all of that. We ain't got no chance. And we're going to get overrun. That's the thing. But Basuma and Højbjerg should stay as far away from there as well, to be honest.
Fair enough. Justin, before you jump, give me what your lineup would be, but also your score prediction, considering you're going.
For me, I think we need to really look at what worked, what has been working well. And I kind of get exactly what Kallum is saying. You know, there are certain players who haven't been up to it. I do think, obviously, though, being the North London derby, I think that we should see everybody really sort of be up for this. Now, you know, my feeling is that the back four, I think, kind of speaks for itself. Porro, Romero, Van de Ven. I'm not so sure if I would go with Davies or Dragusin, but what you know, it would be interesting to see how he would adapt into that position with Van de Ven next to him, you know, or maybe Van de Ven plays there and Dragusin plays in. I'm not so sure. My feeling is he'll go with Davies in terms of that because it's more of a sturdy sort of option and hopefully can give a bit more protection. Obviously, though, as I think Kallum said earlier, it does then defunct almost having the inverted wingers because if one's not doing it, what's the point in the other one doing it? Arsenal are just going to play down the other side really with that. So it kind of defeats the object a little bit with it. I kind of like the idea of Højbjerg starting ahead of Basuma because I just feel that, as I said before, I think, you know, Odegaard is going to really try and pull the strings there, you know, so I think having him in that position would kind of help keep us sort of stable and sort of protect the back four where Basuma has gone missing. I possibly would maybe go with Sarr because of his energy, you know, over Bentancur. I feel for that, you know, and then obviously Maddison. And then I think the top will probably go with as it is, which is Johnson, Werner and Son. But I do feel that lineup really needs to be put to these players that for some of them, they are playing for their futures because, you know, in some performances, they've just not been good enough. And, you know, if we're going to build a squad and we're going to take this seriously forward, this is the game you don't go missing. Simple as that. But in terms of the result, I'm going to have to say, I think 2-1 Arsenal.
Okay, no, fair enough. Thank you very much for coming on, Justin. Where can people find you?
Here next week.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I'm on Twitter mainly, but I do this. Obviously, I'm on Spurs Kings TV with Marlon, usually giving him grief. So yeah, either of those. But yeah, I'm back on here next week. So thank you, Harry, for having me on. Nice to meet you all, and I'll catch up with you soon. Okay.
All the best, Justin. Thank you. Have a fantastic evening.
See you later, mate.
See you later.
Yep.
Fantastic. Ben, I'll come to you. Talk me through that lineup, 1 to 11. I would say that the back 4 or 3, whatever you decide to go with, usually 4, is, you know, picks itself. But in this scenario, perhaps it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's the that's the area of the pitch where there's going to be the most kind of debate as to who plays. I think, like I said earlier, I don't think I would go with Van der Ven at left back if we are going to play that way, which I think we definitely are. We are going to continue to play in the same way that we have been playing all season, I think. Just because they are kind of playing as inverted fullbacks, they will be asked to hold the width at points. Obviously,
it's Postecoglou we're talking about. He don't change for anyone, mate. So we're not changing it.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I don't think as much as Arsenal might hurt us, Arsenal would find a way to hurt us whatever way we played. So I don't think it's the game to kind of back down on those principles. And I think you've got to go and kind of give as good as you've got. I would go with Ben Davies at left back, because I do think if you do want to kind of tuck into a 3 at points and allow Porro that bit more license to go into midfield, which we know he likes to do, you've got more of a natural back 3 there with Romero, Van der Ven and Davis, who, that's kind of his bread and butter position, that sort of left centre-back role. He plays it for Wales, played it for Tottenham for a long time under Conte as well. So that's what I would go with. I go if this is if Porro is 100% fit, which we don't know yet. Paul O'Keefe has said that he probably should make the game, but again, we don't know yet. Midfield, it's such a tricky one. I'm getting incredibly irritated with Maddison at the moment, but I don't think this is the game you drop him, because I think you're going to create more hassle than it's worth if you take Maddison out of this game. I think in terms of some of the stuff we're seeing maybe with his character or his behaviour over recent games, I think that's going to amplify even more if you drop him for the Arsenal game. And I think he will hopefully see this as an opportunity to raise his game and show us the kind of level of performance that we've been missing from him. So I would keep Maddison in there in midfield. I would definitely play Sarr, I think, for kind of his legs. Obviously, we're not kind of seeing the same level from him recently, but obviously must be those past couple of games kind of playing while sort of observing Ramadan as well must be incredibly kind of hard on the body. So I don't know how players like him are able to do it. So hopefully we'll see the kind of same level from him. Obviously didn't start the last game. I think he probably will come back in for Arsenal, put in a very decent performance at the Emirates. And I think it will be Basuma. I think he will go with Basuma. Whether I would or not, I'm not sure. I don't mind the Højbjerg shout from the start. He tends to try and change things up in the midfield within the first sort of 15 minutes of the second half anyway. So it's a bit of a lottery, to be honest. But I would go with Sarr and Maddison. I think it's a bit of a toss of a coin. I'd like to see Bentancur in there. I think his composure in these games is going to be vital. But I just think maybe what Sarr gives you in a game like this is maybe more beneficial, but it's so hard. And would you play them both together? I'm not sure. So I'd probably just go with Basuma, because I think, again, you want to see him raise it for this game. I think up front, as much as I'd love to, I think Richarlison has to play if he's fit, but also there's a difference between being back available and match fit. Richarlison hasn't played any significant minutes for us in a good few months now, really. So I'd rather have Richie on the bench to come and make a really good impact for 30 minutes rather than struggle to get into the game for the first minute because he's not fit enough. And obviously it's going to be an incredibly hard task for him against Saliba and Gabriel. So I'll probably stick with Sonny through the middle, Kulusevski off the right, and probably Johnson off the left. Try something different. We saw how direct Johnson was when he was going at Matty Cash. Hopefully he can cause Ben White some problems. Like I said, I think Kulusevski's ball retention in these big games is going to be huge. Obviously, Arsenal have got a big problem at left back. Who's going to play there? We don't know.
Yeah,
I would like to, in an ideal world, obviously, I think depending on who plays, I think Johnson over there could cause them serious problems because Zinchenko leaves a hell of a lot of space in behind. We've seen that recently with them. Arsenal fans aren't happy with Zinchenko, whether he'll go for Kivior, whether he'll go for Tomiyasu, who knows? But that's an area definitely for Spurs to target. And maybe Johnson is better off there if they are going to leave that space. But I think I would probably just go for Kulusevski. And also, if it is Werner on the left and Kulu on the right, we know that Johnson can make the impact off the bench. So
exactly, yeah.
It's going to be a tough
I said that actually on Parkland podcast yesterday, the bench for me can win this game. So I do actually stand by that. But Julie, I know you have to jump, so thank you very much. Your first time on the show. Where can people find you on social media?
Oh, I'm so dull. Just Twitter.
Thank you very much for coming on, Julie.
Oh, okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Right. Score predictions quickly before we do move on to people's questions. Ben, give me a score prediction. Come on, bit of positivity.
Yeah, I mean, 2-1 Spurs. Why not? I think we can.
Yeah.
Whether I think we will win, I'm not sure. Whether I think we can, yes, I think we definitely can. Hopefully Arsenal kind of crumble under the pressure like they did a few years ago. I think we can get at them. I do think we can get at them. It's just about
space. Look at
I
think it's more likely they'll be coming at us. Let's put it that way.
I think they're the side at the top of the league. They're the onus is kind of on them, and I think the pressure is on them to win this game. So look, I think my head says it will be. I think it'll be narrow either way if someone does win it. I honestly don't know. These games are impossible to predict. So I'll go with 2-1 and try and be
Are
optimistic.
they top after the Palace game yesterday, or is it Liverpool that's top
Goal difference.
now?
They're top on goal difference. They're level on points. They're level on points.
there you
They're
go.
top on goal difference.
But I'm going with you, Ben. I'm going 2-1 as well. I'm feeling optimistic in an one game scenario to end Arsenal's title run, to bring top four hopes back alive. I've made it very clear. I think we're going to lose so many from now to the end of the season. It's going to be really, really tough. But Arsenal, I think, surprisingly, you just don't. With Tottenham, wouldn't surprise me. You beat Arsenal and we draw or lose to Sheffield United or Burnley, where they're relegated at the end. So just don't write that off with Spurs. Callum, I don't think by the impression you're giving and what you gave yesterday, going to be quite as positive. But has anything changed?
No, they're going to ruin my Sunday big time, so I'm going to go 3-2 Arsenal. And I hate to say it, but they're just going to ruin my day, and I'm going to be a moody so-and-so on the pod next Sunday. So, H, be prepared. Be prepared.
Great. Love it. Before we get to people's questions, a quick FPL update in my league. Sean Holder is in first, up to first for the first time, I think, for a little while. Will Savage in second. Mickey Race retaining third. Rob Perry up to fourth. Lewis Godfrey falls to fifth. I think was first at one point. Yeah, it was first at the start of the game week. So that just shows you how tight it is at the top. Sixth is Tom Carr. Falling to seventh is Mark Sweeney, who's consistently been in that top 7-8. Up eighth, new name here, Sam Gilway, so big up. Ninth, Luca Fagna, again been around that top 10. And 10th, a new name, Liam, sorry. So that is the top 10. I say every week, hoping it's going to change, and it just isn't. You don't want to know where I am. And Callum, if you're in my league, then you don't, I'm sure you don't want people to know where you are either. Be right at the bottom, won't it?
Yeah, well, even in your own league, mate, you're still as bad as me. So
I know,
it doesn't really make any difference. You give me a load
I've
of
no
stick
excuse
every
with
time,
that,
but
because I haven't made as many
just
transfers since then.
Well, yeah, you just need to stop giving away points with poxy transfers, because you are
It's only
so
390. Only 390 points are given away this season from transfers. I mean, that is substantial. If you think about it, and I added that on, I'd be second in the league if I had done. Obviously, you don't know where points are scored, etc. But you had that on.
You are genuinely delusional when it comes to FPL. And if you do FPL next season, I will happily take the mickey out of you every weekend, because you can't repeat this year, mate. You've been horrendous.
I've already done 3 for next week. For next week. I bought Gusto in, but he's being assessed. Mate. I think there's another one, Captain Palmer, but he's being assessed. And I kept a doggy and got rid of Porro. And it turns out a doggy is the one that's come up with this injury to the end of the season, and it should be Porro took out.
You ever go at me for all the players that you don't even know who they are and all that? Oh, so it's all right.
Who's below me? Who's below me? You.
Yeah, because I forgot my password nearly 9 months ago.
Whose fault's that?
Well, it's my fault.
Right. We'll leave that there. End of conversation. It's your fault, but no, neither of us are doing very well. So we won't be setting up an FPL podcast. We'll leave that to Dave.
Yeah.
Question time. Absolutely. Question time. Thank you very much, guys. Ben, will give the first question to you from Barney, big up, who says, what's more important, Champions League qualification or a domestic cup win? For me, that's really simple question, but for some it might not be.
Yeah, I mean, we're also desperate to see us win something, aren't we? I think they're both kind of important for different reasons. I think we all want to see us win a cup. And I think if you ask me now, what would you rather see us win going into next season? Or if it was maybe at the start of this season, I would have loved us to win the FA Cup. So yeah, I'd probably say a cup. But I think like Ange said, look, winning a trophy kind of doesn't define what he wants to do here. He wants to do more than that. So we'll see. We'll see how things go over the next couple of years.
Absolutely, yeah. It'd be really interesting to see. Callum, I'm going to put the next question to you again from Barney Big Up, who says, what moments this season have stood out to you and made you think that Spurs are in a club in transition under Andrew, the long-term project is kind of exciting? Is there any moments that Callum you've gone, this team is special? Or for me, there's been quite a few.
Yeah, Villa game, the Tottenham Liverpool game at the Lane as well. Kind of the late goals, all of that stuff. So, I mean, we always knew it'd be a team in transition this year, but there have been a couple of moments of magic. There's been a lot of moments of madness as well, where I have thought, is this sustainable? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah. Staying with you, Callum. Next question is from Jack. That's a big up, who says, Is if Tottenham get Europa League, which of course is possible, what depth players would you like to see and utilise that they currently have? For me, names like Højbjerg and Davis come to mind with European competitions, but what do you reckon?
Yeah, Davis, for me, I'd keep Davis all the time, just dependable.
Absolutely.
I'd say potentially someone like Spence. I think there is a talented player there. So I think of all the loan players that are like first teamers, he's most likely to come back out of all of them. I'd say maybe Donnelly or Devine as well as options, but Højbjerg, Lo Celso, got to go. Just while they're sellable assets, get rid of them. Don't do a waste of time like Dyer, keeping them around too long.
Fair enough. And Ben, I give the next question to you, or the last question, from Villy, who's a regular listener after, so big up. Who says, do you consider FA Cup and League Cup have lost their glory? And would you scrap these competitions? It's quite bold.
Absolutely not. No, especially the FA Cup. These are the kind of competitions the fabric of this country, in terms of in the footballing sense, is built on. I know there's been changes made to the FA Cup, which has not gone down very well with everyone. I think the scrapping of the replays is going to affect teams lower down the pyramid a lot more than people realise. And then you've got managers in the Premier League coming out and moaning about fixture congestion when they're happy to play more games in the Champions League next year. So, yeah, exactly. Absolutely not. Managers need to take these competitions more seriously if they really, I don't know. So, yeah, I wouldn't, not a chance would I scrap them.
No, nor would I. But to add a bit of context, Villy goes on to say, at least for a foreigner like myself, there's absolutely no interest in the FA Cup or League Cup. And I see those as a way to bring in and test youngsters from the academy and should be scrapped. Fair enough. I mean, go down as quite an unpopular or bold opinion.
What I would say to that, though, that kind of does contradict that. If they're saying that the reason that they're kind of only there is to bring players through the academy, then what other chance are they going to get? So it doesn't really make too much sense in my opinion. But yeah, fair assessment. But yeah, not for me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And that kind of wraps us up nicely for today's show. A longer one than I expected, but great nonetheless. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much also to the guests that have left us now, Justin and Julie. But Ben, thank you very much. Last minute substitution, if you like. We need those substitutions to be effective Sunday. Let's just say, where can people find you?
A little Brennan Johnson super sub. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on, mate. The Darren and Doing podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Myself, you can find me on TikTok, just Ben Bowman, and Twitter as well, and YouTube hopefully coming soon as well. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Oh, sounds good. Keep your eyes peeled. Does sound very, very good. And Kallum, where can people find you? Partner podcast as well, which I co-host with you. Talk to people about it and what they can expect.
Oh, we have so much going on at Park Lane, don't we, mate? At the moment, we've got we've got FPL, I think we've got 2 FPLs this week. We did last night, and we've got Thursday night. We've got obviously your new Premier League show that you're going to start up next season. We've got FPL show. There's going to be
the weekly show every Sunday.
Oh yeah, weekly show. I completely forgot about that. That one's not the most important. Let's put it that way. But no, we've got. I think we're going to aim to do nearly about 6 or 7 shows a week if it all comes off. So I mean, let's put it this way: I'm not planning on any sleep whatsoever.
No,
and obviously that's going to be fun alongside. How many shows have you got on your own as well, H? You're doing about 3 a week, aren't you, with Spurs?
At the moment, it's 3 or 4 depending, but consistently 3. And that's a push sometimes, but what I must admit, I love it. Like in the summer, sometimes it's 3 back to back, and you go, that's intense. But 6, 7 a week is maybe doesn't sound a lot to some people, but considering that all of them will be over an hour, that is quite intense. So we are delivering content for you, a partner podcast. You can find Kallum there as well, Kallum Stubbs 97. You can find him bottom of pretty much every table or competition we do, but Kallum doesn't like to say that one, so I say it on his part. But I can't. I'm not in the position to speak, and Kallum will know that and absolutely remind me of that as well. But if you are new to the channel, smash that subscribe button. It's free to do so, and it does help the channel grow. Get to 2K. Follow these guys; you won't regret it. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, Spotify, Amazon Music, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Head over to YouTube as well and smash that subscribe button by searching Scarfy Spurstal. But for now, we always say, come on you Spurs, and I want to talk about a Spurs win against Arsenal. Come on you Spurs.
You were working as a manager at Celtic Park when we met you. We picked you out, you shook us up and turned us around. You turned us